Welcome back to another edition of WeAreSC's Recruiting Roundup with Scott Schrader. I'm Brashier, and we're back on Monday with some more important recruiting news. Thanks so much to Bird Dogs for sponsoring this video and sending me some of their signature Bird Dogs shorts. Their design it fits slimmer through the thigh and leg, giving me a truly sculpted look. Other shorts are made of restricting, stiff cotton, but Bird Dogs fixes this using cloud knit fabric that looks just like khaki, but stretches to get a way slimmer fit without having to sacrifice movement. Order your Bird Dogs today, and they'll give you this free white tech hat with your order. And yeah, you got to go to www.birddogs.com/USC or use promo code USC at checkout. That's www.birddogs.com/USC or promo code USC at checkout for the free white tech hat with your order. They also got these fantastic polo shirts. They're very breathable, look very nice at formal events, but also very sporty and athletic. So thank you very much, Bird Dogs. Scott, we've had quite an eventful Sunday, day after the Washington loss. Talk me through your day, what you've been doing after the Alex Grinch fire.
Yeah, this was something we saw. We knew this was going to happen. We didn't know what the timing was. I'm fairly certain if USC would have lost to Cal, it would have happened a week ago. So this loss was just another loss like this was. There was absolutely no chance that he was going to be back after this last game.
For sure.
And it's one of those things to where, there's a bunch of joy in USC fandom right now over this, all this kind of stuff. But, it's a situation to where, it all could have been avoided by just figuring this all out a year ago. Now we're sitting here, and you have to fire a guy during the season. It got so bad. And it got so bad that it doesn't surprise us either. This is kind of like what we saw was going to happen after the Tulane game. It wasn't even just a Tulane game. It was kind of those final three games, right? The conference championship game with the UCLA, the final game of the season. And then, it started off where USC was playing teams that you would think they would probably surrender maybe 14 points max, something like that. 14, maybe 17 in that range. But, you're watching San Jose State run right through them at times, and you're watching Nevada run through them, and all these teams, and then I think reality kind of hit home when ASU started having their halfback option, miss a fingertip touchdown. They would have maybe won the football game for all we know. So it's just kind of culminated the way we all saw it playing out because there's kind of a history. So today was a day where, obviously you get a lot of phone calls. Everybody wants to know the names. Are you hearing any names, any candidates? And the only thing that we can offer up is that USC is going to pursue, we're hearing, an elite college defensive coordinator. So, they're not going to be looking for the hottest position coach in the NFL and now watch them hire. That's exactly who they end up hiring, some position coach in the NFL. But, they're going to be searching for somebody who has done it and has a resume and a track record. So it should be encouraging for USC fans. And I know we're going to probably, build on this topic. I think this should kind of be the topic of the day in some capacity all the way through. I know there were a lot of visitors that were at USC for this football game. We'll end on that. But, we'll kind of talk about the impact of what this,
Scott, with the firing of Alex Grinch, how does this change the dynamic of recruiting for USC football?
Yeah, it changes the dynamic significantly in this regard immediately. There were guys in Southern California, maybe even we could talk about the West Coast, the top schools USC's recruiting. We're talking about, the Sarah, the Boscos, the Mater Deis, the Sierra Canyons, Mission Viejo. The programs that typically have multiple Division I guys, elite type of prospects. Down at Mission Viejo, I went and just saw Dijon Lee, the 5-star cornerback down there, class of 2025. And this is a guy that in my 21 years of watching high school football in Southern California, there's not one cornerback prospect I would take over this kid. But this is the kind of kid that would not end up at USC if Alex Grinch was still the defensive coordinator. So you had really a low chance of getting recruits. And you're seeing a lot of the top guys from the class of 2024 are going to other schools. They're going to Ohio State. They're going to Alabama. They're going back to Florida State, and they're going other places. I think those guys now start staying home again. But it all is going to depend on the hire as well. We don't know who the hires, but USC is going to, there's really little doubt that they're going to at least bring in somebody who is one of the top guys in the country. So yes, the dynamics has greatly changed. And if Lincoln gets a defense that complements that offense, then we are talking about where it's not going to be, just hoping that you can make the playoffs. Then you're going to get something where it's realistic every year.
For sure. And with no set defensive coordinator, do you think that changes our approach at all with how we go about recruits on the defensive side of the ball?
I think, you would have to think what comes with hiring a new defensive coordinator comes new position coaches, right? So now you're going to have guys that are looking for different type of players. Will the approach change at all? I would say it has to. And I'm not saying that it has to because things have been bad. I just think that not everybody recruits the same type of players. Not everybody's looking for the same type of offensive tackle or offensive guard. There's a lot of programs, like Utah took, offensive tackle in the last recruiting class that USC didn't think it fit their needs at tackle. So they were going to recruit him as a guard, but he wanted to play offensive tackle. So, you're going to have stuff like that's going to happen with new position coaches. Again, they might keep all the position coaches for all we know, but the chances are pretty low on that. So I would say the approach is probably going to change significantly, but just in the type of guys that they're recruiting. And, I think there were a few guys that I would have thought USC would pursued from Southern California or on the West Coast if they haven't. Would like to see maybe them pursue a few more of those guys too. The guys that maybe aren't the highest ranked guys, but guys that are dogs, guys that are going to come in and make some tough plays for you, guys that are going to tackle. You have to start looking at some of that stuff a little bit harder. Not in every case, but because Zachariah Branch, you take a guy like that just does ridiculous stuff, and there's some guys you have to take them, but there's other guys where you need to do some evaluations. And there's a guy at Sarah High School right now that is somebody that I would, as a receiver, probably offer, but USC's I don't think even paying any attention to him. So, I think there's some situations like that where USC could be well served by changing up a little bit more and taking some guys from Southern California.
We'll do some quick announcements, some rapid announcements. Also happening today was a 2026 athlete, Madden Riordan, out of Pasadena, California. He's out of Sierra Canyon, and he's an athlete, but mainly plays cornerback. The class of 2026, of course, committed today, and on the season, he has, in his sophomore season, 25 tackles, 3 interceptions, which leads the team. Scott, do you care to offer any insight?
Yeah, this was something that we were alerted to happening, probably more than a week ago now. So Madden, a lot of people are thinking, oh, look, they fire Grinch and they get a commitment an hour later. Yeah. But, this was something we hate to ruin a good story, everybody. But, this was planned well over a week ago. Yeah. And so, this was something that we were ready for and expecting. But at the same time, it's going to, we'll be talking more about how, this is a kid that understands that USC's been struggling. The defense has not looked good, but a lot of these recruits are looking at the situation as if, they just kind of know it's going to get fixed. So these kids aren't at USC right now, especially these class of 2026. Those guys aren't going to be at USC for at least another year or two. So they're not getting all carried away like fans and all emotional over this stuff. They're kind of looking at it like long-term. So Madden is one of those guys that, Sierra Canyon, his teammate Xavier Jordan is committed to USC, and Sierra Canyon's got a few other guys. Marquise Gallegos is at Sierra Canyon. He's committed to USC. So this might be another one of those schools that kind of becomes like a Sarah, a Mater Dei, a Bosco, where Sierra Canyon is a school that you need to go spend a lot of time at.
For sure, definitely. And then we'll quickly move on to our next segment, and that's USC has a new offer. That's for Desman Stephens II out of Clarkston, Michigan. He's a defensive back who was formerly committed to Boston College, but opened his recruitment on October 3rd. He's the 40th ranked linebacker in the cycle. Moving on, yesterday at the Washington game, USC had quite a long list of visitors. I'll read down quickly the 2024 visitors. Starting with the commits, we have Xavier Jordan, Brian Jackson, Marcells Williams, Marquise Gallegos, Makai Sena, and then those are all the commits that visited. And then teammate of Brian Jackson, 5-star safety who currently committed to Florida, Xavier Filzem, was also visiting USC during that time. Scott, anything to add for him?
Yeah, that was actually kind of a surprise. I got a note. It was probably only like a couple hours before kickoff that he was on USC's campus. So that was just something that we had no idea that was happening. So yeah, what I'm hearing is there's a chance that he could end up coming back for an official visit at some point. So, I do think that USC changing coordinators is definitely a plus for a situation like this. Again, USC, if they hire somebody quick enough, let's say in early December, just maybe a couple of weeks before the early signing period, then the new coordinator can end up getting like an in-home visit, maybe a school visit, maybe an official visit late, right before the dead period. So, yesterday was a big visit to get him on campus because it was something he was with his parents. So it's not like he just showed up and was hanging out with Brian Jackson. This was his entire family came with him out for the visit. So, but there was also another key visitor that was there as well, Justin Tawanu'u from Huntington Beach High School, offensive tackle committed to Stanford. We put in a prediction last night, a USC prediction for him. So, we'll see how that one plays out.
Definitely. Another one was Gabriel Rilford, a current Texas A&M D-line commit.
Yes.
Care to add anything about him?
Yeah, this is somebody that, as of yesterday, you're looking at the situation at USC to where there's so much uncertainty with the defense. Don't know what the direction is going. You're thinking a defensive lineman would be looking at USC's defense right now, where they're letting running backs, run for 200 yards before they're getting touched. It doesn't look good for getting, the top defensive lineman in high school. So I would say, again, this coordinator change could be a positive for USC, but it's kind of sound like LSU might be one of the schools that's going to be hard to beat on this one. But I have not checked in to see how the visit went, so we're hoping to do that tomorrow. And what we'll do is we'll publish an article tomorrow at some point on Gabriel's visit. But we're also going to hopefully talk to Xavier Filson as well to get feedback on that one.
Nice. Okay, so this comes 2 days after the 10-point loss to Washington, and it was really neck and neck for majority of that game up until the last few drives. Scott, you were at the game. What did you see?
We just saw the same thing over again, just with different colors. Yeah. And it's just the thing that is so shocking every time. We expect the score to be high, right?
Yeah.
But it's hard to expect it to look that easy every single week. So when it does happen, where you take a running back from Washington, that's basically, you have the total amount of yards that he rushed for the season, but it was basically averaging 49 yards a game.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
And he ran for 256 against USC.
Yeah.
But we're talking like this every week.
Yep.
It's just different names, different colors, uniforms, different jersey.
Making average ball players look insane.
Yeah. Yeah. And somebody sent me a stat today that the Dylan Johnson ran for 200 yards before he was touched.
It looked like the holes were so wide. Like he were walking down.
I get that view from behind.
Yeah.
So I'm seeing these holes.
You saw it all.
Yeah. And so, but then somebody also showed me an aerial view of USC's lineup at times on the field. And it's like, yeah, no shit, they're going to be able to run. They're right. You've got three guys on the defensive line that are all separated, and you've got all these DBs over to one side. And it's just like, how could you not think? It's like a no-brainer to run for 250 yards. So, I think we're going to see a lot of that stuff maybe be limited a little bit, even in the first game. I think I asked somebody today, I go, it's week 11. How much can you really change? At this point of the season.
Yeah, not much to salvage.
Well, he actually said, surprisingly, a lot of the play calls were really bad too by USC. So I think that, maybe if there's some different play calls and things are less complicated, if you start seeing fewer times where a middle linebacker is looking at his wrist as the ball's being snapped,
the
fewer times that happens, the better. So these guys are just, it's such a complicated defense that they were trying to run that these guys, it's no wonder that there were 38 missed assignments against Cal.
Yep.
Yeah. So USC defense is a touchdown waiting to happen.
That's fair. But it just felt like they had their way with us every single play. And Penix didn't have an amazing night, but he still did everything he wanted to. He felt comfortable in the pocket. He completed passes when he needed to. They just didn't need him to be Superman because they could rely on the run game. It was just, That's it. I mean, that's the story of the season.
Yeah, well, I mean, they did. They made it easy for them. They didn't
Exactly.
rush anybody. USC played the most conservative defensively we've seen all season.
Yeah.
With as far as the pass rush is concerned.
Yeah.
So they didn't put any pressure on Penix. And the thing is, could you imagine if Penix was a threat to run at all?
Oh no, that would have been insane.
Yeah.
He has negative. I was waiting for that to happen though. He had -9 rushing yards on the season. I'm like, okay,
Yeah.
watch him get 100 tonight. He doesn't leave the
It would have been
pocket.
appropriate.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
One thing that fans probably should expect against Oregon is you're going to see more of a base defense, a more static defense. And how much USC is able to eliminate some of the big plays on the scheme that they're going to use against Oregon, I'm not sure. But I again, it's a game they can definitely win. We said that about Washington. Obviously, they didn't end up losing by 10, but they were on their way to drive down the field to potentially take the game-winning touchdown. The holding call, again, people gave Lincoln Riley a lot of crap saying, well, we only lost because of a holding call. And I didn't take it as he said it that way, but they were on their way down to score. The holding call on Deuce Robinson ended up taking it back, and then there was a sack, and the rest is history. They didn't score a point, but they were on their way to do that. And I think with Oregon, you're looking at a team that, yeah, they're going to be better defensively than Washington. Absolutely no doubt. But really, Oregon ended up going to Washington. They lost to Washington too. It's not like, USC lost. Yeah. Obviously USC lost to Utah and Oregon went and boat raced them in Utah. But that's because USC gives up that many points to every single team they play. So you have to look at it that way. So USC has to score more points than other teams. But I just think that Washington was just, it finally at least got to the point to where enough was enough.
Of course. And then, like you said, moving up to next week, we're at Oregon, and the line is set for 14.5 in Oregon's favor. And the spread is at 74.5, so we're expecting another high-scoring affair. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I don't know what the weather's going to be like. Have you taken a look at the forecast?
I have not.
Okay. If it's raining, that changes the outcome. But if we're talking about like a 50-degree day up in Eugene, Oregon, in for November now, it's not typically all that warm. It's going to be a night game. Night games in Oregon, like night games that USC has had in the past, like Oregon State, you can have fog, you can have all kinds of crazy stuff happen. But I just think that USC is going to have a chance to win this game, and because we cover USC and we're part of WeAreSC, we're going to predict USC wins this football game. And I think if USC wins, it's probably going to be a close game. Oregon has the ability to win a close game or a blowout. I don't think one thing USC is not going to have the ability to do is to blow out Oregon.
Of course. I think we'll either win by a field goal or a touchdown, or we're going to lose by 30. There's going to be no in between. I don't think we lose by like 10 to 15. It's going to be like 20 plus, or we'll win.
Well, and that will mean that there'll be a bunch of turnovers again.
Yeah.
And, a good defense can create turnovers. But, just a friend of mine and I were just talking about Oregon. And, Oregon is not as good as people think.
Of course.
And, but USC needs to go play really good to beat them still.
Definitely.
But to me, Oregon is absolutely not a playoff caliber football team.
I don't
just
think
in my opinion. So, but they have the chance to prove me wrong and prove other doubters wrong. The element that matters most on Saturday is the games in Eugene. And, those fans they have some serious energy in Eugene. So I expect it to be loud, volatile, and it's going to be one of those games where you might have to take a timeout or two when you normally wouldn't have to. And that can sometimes impact games too.
Very true. And I'm definitely excited to see how Caleb will fare in that kind of environment. I mean, we saw him in that, in that like kind of turbulent environment at Notre Dame, and it didn't play well. So I'm excited to see how he can come back and in the Eugene and see if he can put something good together.
Yep.
Thank you for tuning in to another edition of WeAreSC's Recruiting Roundup with Scott Schrader. I'm Desman Brashier, and we'll see you next week. Fight on.